let's kick off this deep dive. And you guys know I love EVs, so this is right up my alley. We got a really interesting interview with Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, and
Yeah.
I was pretty surprised by some of the stuff he had to say.
Well, yeah, and I think what's really interesting is that, Farley, he's a car guy. Like, he really knows cars, and it's not just about, the business side of things for him. He actually likes cars, and so when he talks about the competition and when he actually, like, gets in and drives a competitor's car, I think, that's a pretty powerful signal.
Yeah, and not just any competitor's car. He was driving the Xiaomi EV for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Daily driving.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty wild when you think about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
we always thought, Apple was going to be the one to, like, revolutionize the car industry.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we got a cell phone company coming out and making a really competitive car.
And, he didn't just drive it and say, oh, yeah, this is fine. He actually, like, loved it. He was, like, reluctant to give it back.
Yeah, like, what does that tell you? Especially coming from a guy like Farley.
I know. I think this deep dive is going to be really interesting because I think it really gives us a good, like, a look into the future of the car industry. Because he is really, he's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on. And the fact that, these lines are blurring between, like, tech companies and traditional car companies.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Right. I think the other thing that's so great about Farley is that he's very open about acknowledging the strengths of the competition. Like, he's not afraid to say, hey, these guys are doing something really well.
Yeah. He talked about like a 4 years of ignorance for Western car companies that were,
Yeah.
Basically they over-engineered, overpriced their EVs, and they really weren't, keeping up with what consumers actually wanted.
Yeah.
And during that same time, you had,
Well, the Chinese companies.
yeah, they were like laser focused on like, okay, we need to make these things affordable. We need to make them practical for everyday drivers.
Yeah.
And they just totally missed the mark.
I think what it was they were so focused on making the most advanced EV, they forgot about the people who were going to be driving it.
Right.
And like they were trying to build like the most luxurious, the most amazing, but they weren't focused on just getting the basics right.
Yeah.
Which is what the Chinese companies were doing. And so while affordability and practicality, while, the Western companies were kind of, doing that, the Chinese companies were like quietly, scaling up their manufacturing, perfecting their battery technology.
Speaking of batteries, he was a big fan of the BYD LFP batteries.
Lithium iron phosphate.
Yeah, he really liked those. He thought those were...
Well, they have some advantages, right? Like they're much more stable, less risk of, fire.
Which is obviously a big concern with EVs.
Huge concern and longer lifespan. So
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about the battery degrading as quickly. And probably most importantly, they're much cheaper to produce.
Yeah, which means cheaper EVs.
Which means cheaper EVs for consumers.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then on top of that, they've got this like, manufacturing powerhouse behind them. Like think about it, your phone, your laptop, probably even the clothes you're wearing.
Mm-hmm. Most
made in China, I mean?
Yeah, China has spent decades building up, their manufacturing expertise. And, now they're applying that to the EV space.
Yeah, and it's paying off. I mean, BYD is now the world's largest EV manufacturer. They're even bigger than Tesla globally.
That's pretty crazy when you think about it.
I know it is. And it's not just limited to China. Like, they're selling really well in Australia. In Mexico, I mean...
selling Toyota in Australia.
Yeah, it's crazy. So now the question is, how does a company like Ford, an American icon, compete with this tidal wave of Chinese EVs?
Well, I mean, from what Farley says, he's taking kind of a two-pronged approach, right? So first of all, he's saying, okay, we need to catch up. We need to catch up on the technology. And he's not afraid to do whatever it takes to do that.
Yeah, and he created this like skunkworks team. It's this group of engineers and designers, and they're tasked with like coming up with cutting edge EV technology. And it's not just like Ford people. He's brought in people from Tesla. He's even brought in people from like Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically saying we need fresh thinking. We need people from outside of the traditional Ford way of doing things to help us catch up.
Yeah, it's like a total EV dream team.
Yeah.
And they're just laser focused on building the best EV that Ford can build.
And then the second part of his strategy is really understanding what customers want.
Right. And this is where his experience with the Xiaomi comes in. Because, he drove it for 6 months. He got a firsthand look
Yeah.
at what makes these Chinese EVs so appealing.
Yeah, he saw that it wasn't just about the price tag, it was about the whole experience.
Wow.
The Xiaomi, from what he describes, it was well designed, it was easy to use, it was fun to drive.
It clearly made an impression on him, and I think it shaped how he's thinking about Ford EVs going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to see how a CEO of, a legacy car company is embracing these lessons learned from like a newcomer.
It's like the student has become the teacher.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a reminder that, in the EV world, the old rules don't apply anymore. The companies that are going to succeed are going to be the ones that are, adaptable and willing to learn from anyone, even their competitors.
So we've got these Chinese companies leading the charge in terms of battery tech, affordability, manufacturing scale, and then, the big question is like, what's Ford going to do? Like, how are they gonna survive this?
Well, and the other thing that's really interesting too is like the charging infrastructure.
Yes.
Right? Like you can't talk about EVs without talking about charging.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what good is an electric car if you can't charge it
Right.
when you need to?
And this is where things get really fascinating. Because Farley, on his European road trip, discovered that the charging infrastructure in different parts of the world can be dramatically different.
Oh, yeah. He took that electric e-transit van on a road trip over in Europe,
Yeah.
and he was like blown away by how easy it was to charge.
Yeah, and he even said he spent more on tolls than he did on electricity.
I know. Which is crazy when you think about like how much we're all paying for gas these days.
Right, right.
So, I mean, that really highlights the gap between Europe and the U.S.
Oh, huge gap.
in terms of charging infrastructure because...
Yeah, Europe has been investing in this for years.
Yeah.
And it's paying off now.
And here in the U.S., we're still
Yeah.
kind of lagging behind.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've ever taken an EV road trip in the U.S., it can be a challenge to find a charger.
Well, it's like a scavenger hunt sometimes.
It is. It's definitely a challenge. And it's something that needs to be addressed if we want to see like mass adoption of EVs.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if that gives Europe a competitive advantage.
For sure. For sure.
And having that robust charging network.
Well, I mean, it definitely makes a difference for consumers. If you know that you can charge your car easily wherever you go, it removes a major barrier to entry.
It's like the difference between having a gas station on every corner versus having to like drive 20 miles out of your way to find one.
Right, exactly.
And I think that convenience factor is huge.
Huge, especially when you're trying to convince people to switch to EVs.
So we've got this, we've got this rise of these Chinese EV companies. We've got this infrastructure gap, and then we've got this whole debate about hybrids versus EVs. What's Farley's take on all that?
He actually sees hybrids as a stepping stone.
Okay.
To full EVs.
Like a gateway.
Yeah, you could say.
To the electric revolution.
Yeah, and he points to, Ford's success with hybrid trucks, particularly in the U.S.
Yeah, those are really popular. I mean, is it just the fuel efficiency, or is there something else going on there?
Well, fuel efficiency is a big factor, but there's also, things like exportable power, which is really appealing to a lot of truck buyers.
What is exportable power?
So you can use the truck's battery to like power tools, appliances, even your house in an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big selling point for, contractors, people who live off grid, people who just want to be prepared for power outages.
So it's like having a generator.
Yeah.
In your truck.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it really highlights how, hybrid vehicles can cater to some very specific customer needs.
Right.
Especially in a market like the U.S. where trucks are so popular.
Right.
But ultimately, Farley believes that even those hybrid truck buyers will eventually transition to full EVs as the technology improves. As the charging infrastructure expands...
That's the bet he's making.
That's the bet. And it's a bet that, a lot of other car companies are making as well.
It's a gamble for sure, but it's a gamble that's driven by some pretty... compelling factors.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about it. EVs just offer so many advantages.
Yeah.
They're quieter, they're more efficient, they require less maintenance, and of course, they're better for the environment.
And then there's the performance aspect, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like electric motors have instant torque, which means you get that, amazing acceleration that EV drivers rave about.
It's a totally different driving experience.
Totally different, and it's one that's winning over a lot of people.
So we've got this like perfect storm brewing, right? We've got advancements in battery technology. We've got this expanding charging infrastructure, growing consumer demand, and we've got this push from governments all over the world to transition to cleaner transportation.
Yeah, it all points to a future where EVs are the dominant form of transportation.
But as we've seen, it's not happening overnight.
No,
There are challenges
definitely.
for both car companies and consumers.
We talked about the infrastructure gap, the need for more affordable EVs, and then just like changing people's perceptions about cars.
Yeah, it's a complex equation. But one thing's for sure, this EV revolution is underway.
It is.
It's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
And I think one of the most intriguing aspects of this whole thing is the role that these companies like Xiaomi are playing.
Yeah, it's really kind of wild to think about a cell phone company being like a major player in the car industry.
But as Farley's experience shows, they bring a fresh perspective, a different set of skills.
Yeah, they're not burdened by the legacy of the traditional car industry.
Right.
So they can kind of come in and approach things in a...
Yeah, they're thinking about the car as a connected device, as an extension of our, digital lives.
Right.
And they're leveraging their expertise in, software,
Right.
user interface design, consumer electronics to create a driving experience that's more intuitive, more enjoyable, more connected.
It's a challenge to the old guard.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's forcing, companies like Ford to really step up their game.
Adapt and evolve.
Yeah. And that brings us back to Jim Farley and his skunkworks team, because he clearly recognizes the threat, but he also sees the opportunity.
And he's assembled this team of, really talented engineers and designers from all different backgrounds, and he's given them the freedom to experiment, to push the boundaries, to come up with, innovative solutions.
It's a bold move.
Yeah.
It shows he's not afraid to shake things up.
Embrace new ways of thinking.
Yeah. He's basically created like a startup within Ford, like this lean, agile team that's totally focused on developing the next generation of EVs.
And it's not just about the technology. It's about understanding, the changing needs and expectations of customers.
And I think that's where his experience with the Xiaomi really comes in.
Yeah.
Because he saw how a tech company approaches the car as a consumer product.
Yeah.
Focused on user experience, connectivity, this seamless integration with our digital lives.
And he's using those insights to shape Ford's EV strategy.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study in how a legacy company can adapt and innovate in the face of all this disruption.
And it's a reminder that, the old rules don't apply anymore. The companies that succeed are going to be the ones that are willing to learn, to adapt, and to embrace the future, no matter where it comes from.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the rise of Chinese EV makers, the challenges of charging infrastructure, the debate about hybrids versus EVs. But I think the most important takeaway is this. The automotive industry is at a crossroads.
It is.
We're seeing a fundamental shift in how cars are designed, manufactured, and consumed.
And it's happening faster than a lot of people expected.
It really is. I mean, a few years ago, Tesla was the undisputed leader in the EV space. And now you've got these companies like BYD, Xiaomi, they're challenging that dominance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to the pace of innovation in this industry.
It really is.
The old rules don't apply, and the companies that are willing to embrace change are the ones that are going to thrive.
Yeah, and it's not just about being first to market with a new technology. It's about understanding the needs of consumers, creating that seamless user experience, building that robust ecosystem.
The whole package.
Yeah, to really support this whole transition to electric mobility.
Yep. And, I think another thing that's really interesting is, Farley's story about how his family was ashamed that he worked for Toyota way back when.
Oh, yeah.
Really highlights, how deeply ingrained our perceptions of the car industry are.
Yeah, totally.
Like, those perceptions were shaped by decades of competition between American, European, and Japanese car makers. But now we're seeing this new global dynamic emerge, with Chinese manufacturers playing a leading role.
Yeah, and it's happening so fast. I mean, it seems like just yesterday we were all marveling at the Tesla Model S, and now BYD is outselling Toyota in some markets.
It's crazy.
I know, that's the power of disruption when a new technology comes along, addresses a fundamental need in a better way. It can completely upend entire industries.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's happening in the car world right now.
It is.
And Farley's decision to create that skunkworks team, I mean, that's a clear acknowledgement of that disruption. He knows that Ford can't just rest on his laurels. They have to innovate, they have to adapt if they want to stay competitive.
Yeah, and by bringing in, talent from Tesla, from Formula One, from these outside sources, he's sending a clear message that Ford is serious about winning this EV race, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah, it's a really bold move, and I think it speaks volumes about his leadership style. He's not afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, learn from anyone, even his competitors.
Yeah, and I think that's the key takeaway from this whole conversation. The future of the car industry belongs to those who are willing to embrace change, to challenge assumptions, and to constantly push the boundaries.
It's a future where technology and sustainability go hand in hand, where the driving experience is more connected and more enjoyable than ever before, and where the lines between those traditional car companies and tech giants are increasingly blurred.
It's a future that's being shaped right now, and it's one that we should all be excited to be part of.
So the next time you see an EV on the road, don't just think of it as a car. Think of it as a symbol of this incredible transformation that's happening all around us.
Think of it as a glimpse into a future where mobility is cleaner, more efficient, and more connected than ever before.
And remember, as Jim Farley has shown us, the companies that succeed in this new world will be the ones that are willing to listen, to learn, and to adapt, no matter where the inspiration comes from.
So keep your eyes open, stay curious, and embrace the ride. The future of mobility is electric, and it's going to be an exciting one.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out part 2, where we'll be diving even deeper into this topic. And until next time, keep on innovating.
Keep on rolling.
And keep on driving towards a more sustainable future.
Cheers.
Cheers.
He took a road trip in